Join us as we unravel our deep-rooted relationship with money, from earliest memories to eureka moments and building wealth. Birth to Net Worth, with me, Tristan Trenberth.
Welcome to this week's edition of Birth to Net Worth. This week we have an amazing human being we met through a mastermind of high conscious go-getters. We are also in a real estate community together, and he's really top 20 mortgage originator, loan officers in the United States. He's been number one VA loan originator in the United States many times during his career, and target to be the number one mortgage officer in the United States. Let me bring to the stage Scott Evans. Scott, welcome to Birth to Net Worth. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Scott, give us a little bit more about your background. I gave us a brief intro there. What else can you share about yourself, family, that kind of thing?
Where should we begin? Grew up in South Florida, Boca Raton, Florida, born there, and made my way to Atlanta, Georgia. I was a computer science major. I went to school at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and graduated in the dot-com crash where it was saturated. It was a great time to become a computer programmer, where there was nothing but saturated with programmers.
Right.
So I bartended all throughout college.
Yeah.
I had a good friend that was living in Monterey, California, that was going to the postgraduate school there. And if you're a programmer, you're looking for a job, you would move to close to San Jose. So he's like, come live with me. You could live on the couch and go look for a job. So I packed everything up, moved out to California, and was bartending, got a job working at Pebble Beach, various places. And that was right when the real estate market was taking off from 03 to 05. And I had a bunch of clientele that were real estate agents and mortgage people coming into the bar, dropping a lot of money. And it got very intrigued. So that's how I got into the mortgage industry January 1st of 2006, which was a great time to get. Great times to get in.
Right at the peak almost.
Yeah. But I didn't have any business to lose, and I didn't have any bad habits to break. So I just put my head down and grinded and been able to build a great little business.
Yeah. Have you been in it continuously ever since, it seems?
Ever since. Yep.
Right. Well, awesome. So let's go back to the genesis of your relationship with money, your experience of money. I mean, Birth to Net Worth, it talks about how we became aware of money. Maybe there was an experience, a memory that we had. What was your first recollection of a reference to money, or an experience having money, or money being spent, a cost of something? Tell me about where that lands in your memory.
Yeah. When I think of, I just remember just growing up where my mom was always complaining about not having any money. And that's what I connect to growing up, was just not, don't have enough money to pay the bills. And it just was super stressful. My dad was blind. So he didn't work. So he was a stay-at-home dad.
Wow.
And before this call, I was actually thinking about some things that kind of drove me. And I think I look at how connected my dad not bringing in money, that, hey, you weren't a man if you didn't make money. So then that was like, I think, a driving force to propel me to, I gotta make money to be a man.
Yeah.
So it was, I just was thinking about that before this call.
Yeah. So your mum, worrying about maybe not having enough money, your dad in a very different position where he just couldn't work. Didn't fit the normal sort of, role models in the home. How is your dad's awareness? Obviously, your dad used money regardless of the fact he, was blind. How did your parents have similar or different views, and how did that shape your initial opinion of money, what it meant, its value and all of those things?
My dad used to be an engineer, but his eye disease kept deteriorating. So eventually, it was when I was at an early age, was forced to like they um let him go because they're afraid he was going to slip and fall. He worked at GE or I can't,
Yeah.
something like that. He was afraid he was going to slip and fall or something was going to happen.
Mm.
So then he just became just a stay-at-home dad and think that, I mean, he was always doing little side jobs, trying to bring in some money to help out, but it was not much he could really, it was a lot of times just on the phone, talking to people. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he still hustled, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
Uh, but what was the question
So
precisely?
how do your mum and your dad's opinion or perspective towards money kind of help form yours? Was your mum was obviously quite frugal. She was trying to make ends meet from what she was bringing in. Your dad obviously had experience with money through life. Must have been a very different experience than that you may have seen with your friends, having maybe the father being the breadwinner primarily, and maybe the mum being the stay-at-home mum, or both parents working. What kind of formed your perspective of money there?
Yeah, man, it's forcing me to like go back and think about things. Um, th- so I grew up in, I don't know if you're familiar with Boca Raton, Florida, or familiar with Boca Raton, Florida.
I've been there once. I worked in Palm Beach for a couple of months in '94.
So yeah, Boca has, I mean, when you bring up, there's a lot of really rich Jewish people there too growing up. So there was we were very extremes where people, if I said Boca Raton, they're like, oh my God, you must be loaded, or
Yeah.
that thought process. But um, I mean, I think it wasn't so much of my parents as I was always looking at all of my friends that all had money and at the schools I went to, and I think in a way jealous of what other people had.
Mm.
And but my mom always seemed to, like, it was like still a good childhood. Like when I look back and think about the overall childhood, I mean, I don't think I ever felt I didn't have what I needed. Um, I haven't really thought about their values and the differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I gotta like really dive in deep
Yeah.
and think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting how different people there are. A lot of experiences where there's a lack of money, there's no money, there's fights over money, which are the first memories so many people have. And
Fights.
in some people's experience, that's, like you said, that's the driver to make, I'm never going to be in that position again. And that drives people to, an extreme opposite end of success.
Yeah. I mean, I was always hustling to throw out. I mean, I was working as soon as I could get a job. I mean, I was mowing lawns. I was doing everything to make money.
When did you start mowing lawns? I think I started about 10 or 11 years old.
10 or 11. Yeah. I was doing that. I was doing work, side projects for my mom for like, she was a bookkeeper. I would
Right.
do projects on the computer, bookkeeping, worked at like ice cream shops, scooping ice cream. I was always working I felt like I had to just take it on my own and make my own money.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you looked at your friends and you saw the sort of the difference in what you had or didn't have and what they had, were you aware of generosity and kindness around money in some of those situations where there might be abundance rather than scarcity?
Oh, yeah, that is probably some of the best qualities I got from my parents was the generosity, just more, not about so much with money, but their time, because they were very active helping other blind people. Every weekend, my mom was active in Girl Scouts, so they didn't have money to give, but they gave their time. I think that's actually probably one of the best qualities that they instilled on me is my generosity and helping people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like my dad. Those are my vivid memories of my dad just talking with people that were just becoming blind and not how, like, all these little like tricks that he learned to figure things out, that just people that are not used to being blind, all of a sudden now they're blind and they don't know how to navigate And so he was just kind of always walking through it. I just remember him always be on the phone talking to people,
Yeah.
helping them.
Helping them through the transition. And yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings to mind a very different expression of the blind leading the blind. And that's a very powerful example of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like within any business, when you learn anything, any skill, you have to have somebody that has experience in that to help you along, whether that be financially, whether it's working in life and living life with a reduced or no sight. I think there's so much that people realize and they gain over time that, like we'll help each other in business to get those little nuggets to learn from other people's, I won't say mistakes, but the experiences of other people to shortcut that growth and, acceptance of these things. Because, whether it's a resistance to having money because we grew up in an area of scarcity where there was, rich people are bad, they worship the devil or whatever the story is that the family's built that gives us that perspective. It really allows us to be more embracing of those things and understand that that's just one perspective. And when we look at some of the greats in medicine, in life, the philosophers, it's really just a shift on perspective that allowed a huge, gain from certain things. I mean, I remember the X-ray. I believe that was a result of X-raying concrete. And then somebody realized that, hey, what if we did that on a body and see how they were looking for fractures in concrete. When how well have we tuned that, and how has that revolutionized medicine over 60, 100 years, So in a way with blindness, I can imagine that it's a huge, aha moment for so many people that your dad was able to share with, hey, when you do this, be aware of that. I mean, I've never had the experience of being blind other than being blindfolded, but how your other senses become so much more tuned and alert when you're in those situations. And when we're with money, when we're looking at scarcity, we're tuned on one thing, we're looking in one direction, but when we turn around into abundance, our focus changes completely, and our whole perspective, our whole context changes when we see the abundance instead of the scarcity. So, So, you obviously took on jobs very early on to, work through your own availability of funding your own, adventures and your own, acquisitions of whether it was toys or experiences along the way. When did that kind of transform to the next level rather than being, a few cents or a few dollars for a few jobs here and there? When did it kind of level up and you realize that there was another level to money as a young person, which began that transition to, let's look at responsibility, bills, cars, houses, all of those other things that came later on in life? What was that kind of next step for you, seeing the different context of money and how it could be used as a teenager or how, as a youth?
Yeah. I mean, I had bought myself a car in high school, worked at the local Cheesecake Factory as a bus boy and server, and bartended all throughout college. Worked for the NBA as a ball boy. Worked for Delta Airlines. I mean, I was so many crazy jobs doing that. But I don't know if I definitely. I mean, I was paying all my bills, but my mom was helping me out. It wasn't until when I got out of school, I was so broke, and then I was, moving up to California, and it was when I started bartending at Pebble Beach, and I started making way more money. There and at the different places, and that's where, my first success of having some money. It wasn't really that much money looking back, but it felt like a lot. Here, or then eventually eventually my career took off, and I'm now millions and millions and millions with real estate. So so that was a different type of mindset
Yeah.
for money. I mean, it wasn't until probably like 5-6 years ago where it just really just started stacking for me, just personally.
Mm.
That wasn't really the question, but
Yeah.
I just wrote down some really audacious goals, and I've been able to hit them. And now that's why my goal is just to be number one loan officer in the United States. I'm like, why not? I keep hitting all the other goals.
Yeah.
So, um, I do when I dream bigger, my mind comes in is like, oh, that's too big. You know, like the drunk monkey starts creeping in, telling me that you can't do that. That's not possible. But can I be have worth 100 million? I mean, my first goal is to be worth 30 million net worth.
Mm.
So I just keep checking along.
Yeah. So, the meaning of money is now, you know, just so different for you and me from when we were both young. How old are you now, Scott?
43, 43, turn 44
43.
next month.
So, do you have kids?
Yep, I have 3.
So, looking back at your mum, working with your mum and helping her out as a bookkeeper, was there any of those skills that kind of helped you with how you looked at money when you started working, or was that just a side hustle and you didn't necessarily relate that to what you were doing from that point onward?
If yeah, I mean, I think it was just my mom never had any money to give me, so everything was all working the side hustles was just for me to be able to keep up with the other kids that were going out to the movie, like just to try to fit in with all the rest of the kids where I lived at.
So did you learn any skills of bookkeeping that you managed to apply to your life, which helped your management of money, or
Yeah,
money
definitely
flowed through you and to you?
Yeah, I didn't. My mom was a great at making things last, and very good at budgeting. Um, so I don't think I developed that habit. So I think I did the opposite of just spending all the time. Um, it wasn't until maybe like 7 years ago when I finally someone truly taught me how to save money, and there wasn't skills that they taught me, but I was looking at it all wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bookkeeping, it was just to keep I was always wanting to solve things, and it was just, keep busy during growing up. So it was just, math. I loved math. So it was fun to just play with numbers.
Fantastic. So back to California and the mortgage career, 2006, when you really got into that. You said you made a lot of connections through, bartending, people in the real estate business that, really gave you the vision that there was something there for you. It was quite an interesting climb, I'm sure, in the business world at that point. And then obviously 2009 came through. Walk us through that progress and what you saw around you with the other loan officers around you and how they handled money compared to how you handled money. You've stayed in the business throughout. A lot of people in real estate agency and loans, even in the last year or so, just disappear. Same thing in the crash. A lot of people have disappeared because they were riding the wave, and now they stayed on the wave too long and it crashed on them. You've obviously ridden the wave. You've jumped off the wave while it's coming along, and you've paddled along in the trough. Tell me about this last 15 years. I'm sure that's incredibly interesting.
Yeah. So in 2006, I feel like I would self-sabotage myself, all the time. Like you did really well in school, but I would do something stupid that would, it was a recurring thing. So sure enough, before I moved from Northern California down to San Diego, I self-sabotaged my stuff. And then I had to put my head down and work. So I was working 7 days a week for 5 years. I mean, I was working at 2 nightclubs in San Diego while I was doing on the mortgage. So I had to make it work because I had no one else. My parents couldn't bail me out. Someone talked me into buying houses right before I got into the business. I got stuck with those homes. Like everything was kind of like, closing in on me.
Yeah.
So I just put my head down. I think people react to, different ways when the stress is coming in. For me, the anxiety just creates me to do and take action. So I was just working all the time,
Yeah.
which I think benefited me in the sense, one, I couldn't buy a property when the crash was happening in 2006 when I got in the industry. So I wasn't able to buy a house until 2009 or so. But I was working very, very hard, whereas everyone else that was in the industry developed all the bad habits. So it was just falling out. I think that's what's happening again right now in the industry, is all these people that were just coasting in the mortgage world, 2020, 2021, 2022, are just crumbling. And I mean, I have people literally this last week that have been working for me since 2006 that can't pay their mortgage and they have to quit because they got to pull their 401k out.
Wow.
Two people.
Wow.
Literally just, so I see there's, yeah, I mean, it's hard to remember back then in 2006 about what people were going through. I just remember it was like a revolving door, and I just
Yeah.
was just focused on what I had to do. I mean, it's 17 years ago. I can't. It's hard to remember back then.
Yeah.
Now I love this market. I love how hard it is. It's forcing me to evolve as a person. I'm getting better and better and better every single week.
Yeah.
I don't want it to change. I like how it just keeps getting harder. So there's a better version of me that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
So once again, it's a different type of situation. Well, from my 2006 where I did some stupid stuff. Here it's now like the industry, the environment as a whole. So I could have kept my head down, or I could just evolve, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. 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 I think we're fortunate to be in the community that we are, and in a business, in a greater business community that is very much set on personal growth and evolving ourselves to better and adapt. But it's amazing how there's a lot of resistance out there to change, whether it's change around them or like you're saying, you're accepting the change, you're evolving with the change, and growing with that change rather than resisting it. And bad habits are stuck and they can't change from the habits, and then they fall away. So
Yeah, it's interesting where some people, when like shit hits the fan, they're like, I don't know, how people are just folding. I don't know. I guess I can't, for me not to pay the bills and pay what I have to do, and like I'll just work my way out of it, like in a way where that's how I saw how my parents were, where there's people I know that just, they're like not doing anything. So I don't, it's weird how I guess people have their own mechanism when that's pulling out, if that makes sense.
yeah.
This is what I'm just observing happening around me, and I can't get why they're not actually taking action or doing something.
Yeah. Were you ever in that position that before getting into this industry where you kind of almost sounds like people freeze, they get stuck?
I've seen it now multiple times, and I'm not wired that way, and it just, once again, it goes back to, I mean, watching my parents. They're always were doing something. I mean, granted, they were not barely making ends meet, but it's just, that's what I got from them.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know, I want to say lazy, but
Yeah. So, we talked a little earlier about, your massive success, from my perspective, looking in and what you're describing, your massive success in the mortgage business. How else are you talked about, making money? Now you're multiplying money, you're stacking it. Real estate investing, I believe, is in your past and present and likely future. How has that come into your purview in the beginning? How did you get introduced to that? You said you bought a number of houses earlier that you were kind of trying to keep going by just working all of those hours to keep things afloat. How has that experience transitioned into your recent experience of acquisitions, and how you're now looking at acquisitions in the future?
Yeah. It's wild um how much I was able to really increase my like net worth in a short period of time over the past few years. There's, I guess, trailwinds that, you know, throw someone forward or throw them backwards. And I was in one of those industries that blew us up tremendously.
Yeah.
So I rode that wave and yeah, I own a whole bunch of different properties, currently still buying property. Just learn a lot more about, tax advantages, things like that.
Yeah.
With, and, man, I never thought I would be able to have as much as I have now. That just, I felt like I should have dreamed, looking back, I wish I would have dreamed bigger.
Yeah.
I never thought I would have been able to have like this different properties. Now it's like, why not dream bigger and go bigger? It just, I'm shocked about what I've been able to do, I guess, in my lifetime. And I'm only 40. So now I just like, why can't I keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on that curve, what is your perspective on your management of wealth at different levels? I mean, T. Harv Eker speaks about your financial thermostat, that you can earn more money, but unless you change your perspective on money, your relationship with it, change your relationship with it, you're still going to drag yourself back to the previous level. How did you transcend those levels? And I mean, not specific levels of numbers, but how do you transcend not making enough at home in the mind as you got to these different places? You had a bit of a struggle in, the mid 2000s to then, getting through the recession. And now the last few years, like you said, you've been aligned with the wind, aligned with the tailwind to grow. How is your evolution with that relationship and understanding dealing with bigger numbers and how that can be impactful to you?
Yeah, now, from last year to this year, my income's down 90%. So it's down significantly. But, which I feel like now it's a blessing because it's forcing me to get back where I was becoming like careless. I was like just printing money, right? And I was not looking at expenses. It just didn't matter. There's so much coming in that it didn't matter whatever the expenses are. So I'm actually, I guess more of now it's like keeping the money that I have, right? And now making smart moves. Before I was just, learning. I was buying properties with other people, invest, with partners, and there's all these different things that I've learned with buying with other people too, because now they're in situations, right? And then people start making, when they get strapped with cash, start making poor decisions too. So navigating through some of these partnerships right now. So there's definitely learning some new things.
Yeah.
I'll be able to get through it right now. I've been setting my intentions, putting out there in the universe that everything's flowing exactly what, surprising me on how everything's unfolding. But it's a different mindset right now too. I'm trying to also keep the money that I have and just be more disciplined again, because I went back to the habits of, I'll keep spending money. It's just going to continue to come in. So I just had to shift.
Yeah.
Now I have twins. I have twins that are a year old. They literally just turned a year.
Yeah.
Which we manifested. So now I have this manifestation muscle that, like, if I can manifest twins, I can do whatever the heck I want. That's where the goal of being a number one loan officer in the United States. Like, why not?
Yeah. How far down the line are the quintuplets that you're going to manifest?
I don't know about that. I think we'll stop with the twins.
Yeah. Yeah. So, setting yourself up and your family for a legacy of wealth, what are you going to, obviously, your parents' situation was the situation they grew into through their life. You've got a lot more control. You've got a lot of flexibility in what you have in your life that you've manifested to this point. How do you foresee creating stability, structure for your children, for your wife, for your later life, your retirement? So many entrepreneurs never really retire because it's just changing what you do that becomes much more enjoyable than maybe something you've done through life. But it tends to be with entrepreneurs, the successful ones, that they find things that are enjoyable and solve problems in those areas. How do you see the next, 50 years of your life, 60 years of your life, where your kids are going to grow up? You've had experiences of I say scarcity and the lack of money. Your kids will probably never experience that which you did. How do you feel that you can convey to them the experiences that you had, which become meaningful, impactful to them and the way that they handle money, they handle relationship with money, and understand how money is viewed by other people, which may be differently from you and your family compared to people who might be more in alignment with your early experiences in childhood. There are people of all that different, financial demographic out there. Your child is probably going to be the more generous child out there in the school that may be helping other kids because you have more means, they have more awareness of the lack of around them and the abundance they have. How do you see yourself bringing awareness and respect towards money and the understanding of how to create their own legacy and their own, management of your wealth coming forward?
Man, I had chills all over my body as you were talking, just thinking about, because I have a 12-year-old. And so, with the previous partner, and 5 is when we broke up. And so then I was, going back. I think I was Disneyland dad. And so now I look back like what was instilling on him. Like he's just got everything, whatever he wanted. Right. And I'm seeing how he's, from that 5 to now he's 12, but what I'm doing to him, right. Where the in a way, like I'm grateful for my parents, the stuff that they taught me. And I guess the drive that I had, that they gave to me, where now it's different for him, where he doesn't even, he has a totally different mindset, like a view on money. He doesn't have the same work ethic, working hard, persevering. I feel like I've, at the moment, kind of messed up with him, like what I've instilled, and now trying to unwind that.
It's funny, I was talking to last week's guest, Devin, and he was talking about his daughter and, some low experiences he had, and, how that kind of relates to him conveying his relationship to money with her so that she has an understanding and respect of money. And, looking back, my relationship's very different with money than it was. You can't give the kids the same experiences we had because we're different souls on the planet. We have different experiences. But it's certainly interesting to see, do we share struggle with our kids? I kind of hid struggle from my kids emotionally and financially over a number of years. And I look back and I think, well, although everything's perfect and complete as it is, how different would it be for these kids to see that, oh, there's a shining light at the end of the tunnel, though there's some winter seasons, then the summer season after the spring comes along, there's retooling, like you said. Now sounds like you're in a bit of a fall season or a winter season with your income. Now you're looking about how we can put nutrients down, how we can sow the fields in the coming spring to create the next summer and, the harvest of abundance, at the end of that and during that season.
Yeah.
So I think kids in their lives have so many different things they see around them. I would have liked to take my kids to volunteer at different places. It wasn't something that we had some alignment on, but we got a different cause that we're looking to create some impact with, which is around teenage mental health. But I think exposure and service, like you said, with your parents, did a lot for other people, in the world of the blind and the, low levels of sight. My parents helped a lot with the church, the congregation there. They gave a lot of their time. And I think that it's it's definitely a perspective that's very helpful. Whether money isn't something you can give, that there's always something that we can give.
Yeah. It's, I mean, my son, yeah, we would volunteer during the holidays. My son and I think that's his favorite. He actually really, really, really enjoys that.
Yeah.
And giving back during holidays, or just feeding the homeless and just doing
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I wish, yeah, that's the thing I struggle with, because I don't want to just give everything to him. I want him to be able to work for it as well. Um, yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I see what I'm not what I want to instill, like hard work, I guess, putting in it, getting that, like I love that quality about me, and that's what I look for, is for other employees that have hard work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about it.
It's funny. Devin was saying as well that in Europe, generational wealth can last, just is pretty much perpetual. In the United States, generational wealth generally disappears after 2 generations. It's not clear why, but I think the different economy here, the different perspective, and, like you're saying, we want to give our kids everything we can, but it doesn't necessarily set up generations ahead for the ongoing education of money, because we can change our kids, future generations, by educating our own kids in money, educating our own kids around the energy of money and how it can flow. Because if they learn it when they're a kid, they're naturally going to share that with their kids when they have kids. But if we don't teach our kids anything, they go through thinking that there's nothing to learn, and shit, why are there money problems? Like, everyone's got money problems, except, why have these people not got money problems? But, that's why we have these conversations. Is a banking product called Gravy Stack that's based in Arizona. They're creating a banking product for teens, for kids. So it's a gamified experience of putting the money in the bank, doing some little, some missions, as they call it, to go and find maybe TV subscriptions or other subscriptions family have got that they don't need anymore. Kind of tidying up in that winter to, lower expenses whilst allowing a bigger return on their money, and, looking into, maybe investment opportunity later on. It's not primary part of that. Another couple of guys we interviewed last year, which was toilet paper hands. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the diamond hands expression for stockbrokers when they make a lot of money. They had this character that was over the cubicle that was saying, "Oh, you need to buy these shares." So this other guy was buying the shares and pushing up his value of shares. So it was really metaphorical. And then when he was done selling his shares, he wouldn't tell the other guy, and all the share values would go down. So he had toilet paper hands. He would lose a load of money. So he's kind of not having the experience that, somebody in the same office or the same town was having. And they're creating financial literacy resources for teens, kids to learn from, from their perspective, how the relationship to money is. And I think they've got some UN support on that as well. They're based down in Nicaragua, I think, if I remember rightly. But there's more and more resources coming out, thankfully. Even, Mike Michalowicz, that wrote Pumpkin Plan and Profit First, he wrote a book called My Money Bunnies, which was for, kids, probably, I'm thinking probably about 5, 6, 7 years plus. Not a very long book, but just had 3 jars: today money, someday money, and one day money. So it's kind of categorizing things into a little bit of money to spend anytime now, some for the medium term where you might save up for, I don't know, a sketchbook or something that was a bit more meaningful, but they had a long-term goal for saving as well. So it set the mind into, 3 different timelines for what money might be used for. So kind of goal setting, and, like we work with Matthew, I want to manifest this or better. Because often by the time you got to the amount of money that you wanted to save for that one thing, there was something else out there that was, "Oh, I'm glad I saved this. Now I want to save a bit more." My daughter's saving up for these American Girl doll things that were out, a few years ago.
Yeah.
She would save her money and do some chores around the house. And, in a period of time, she'd save something up, and she could go and buy what it was, but it generally wasn't exactly what she was looking for in the first place because of that timeline. So, I'm all about exploring different things and different ideas people have to, share their experiences, bring kids on almost like a drive along financially,
Yeah.
I think there's certain things that kids can have the capacity to understand. There are things
Yep.
beyond their capacity at different ages, but I think the more we can help them understand that, it's all more about the money you keep than the money you make. And that's, the term
Right.
for me was, rich dad, poor dad, and cash flow quadrant.
Yep. Yeah. Now I'm it's about as much money I can keep. It's a ebbs and flows. So I feel like this is a harder market now for me. This is the first time my business has not ever increased since 17 years. Every single year I had my best year ever. So
Yeah.
I was coasting. I wasn't doing, I was just not doing anything. 2020, 2021, it was just coming in.
Yeah.
But now it's like, all right, I got a different person, a different version of me
Yeah.
now. It's definitely, it's good where, I need to, you triggered some stuff that I didn't think about, where doing the bookkeeping, like with the spreadsheets and all that type of stuff that my mom had me do. Like I was introduced to stuff at an earlier age, with numbers and looking at stuff where my son is 12. I think I was easily doing on the computer. I think I was programming stuff on the computer
Yeah.
at his age, like on just kicking around.
Yeah.
So it definitely so where there's people there where that their relationship to money, where it's just constantly manifesting and flowing money in all the time, where is that what the relationship that people have with money as far as birth to now?
No, it's really just understanding every person's journey from birth and, when they grow net worth, what we've just filled in those gaps between your mum not being able to afford things, you helping with the bookkeeping and having your own jobs, to where you are now, and where everyone is today is very different. So it's really understanding how that journey occurred, and, what we can look back and reflect on and take into the future for ourselves and also potentially future generations as well.
Got it.
So yeah, it's been amazing. So let's wrap up shortly. And what have you've obviously shared a couple of takeaways here. I mean, I think the bookkeeping's incredible. It's an incredible skill if somebody understands what it is they're looking at and why that makes an impact to the business. I've certainly learned so much about ways we can offset tax or use the tax code to lower our tax liability. And even the simple things like financial literacy of, balancing your checkbook. Nobody has really a checkbook these days to balance. It's just plastic. Nobody understands the value of pieces of paper that have different numbers on them. And it's now just it's just an electronic flow of numbers. People don't respect the physical currency.
Yeah.
And
I still like writing checks.
Huh?
I still like writing checks. I like have, there's another thing my mom taught me, just how to do, write checks. And I just like having a checkbook that I know I can be able to pay for something if I need to, or, that is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut up, but I don't, no one really has checkbooks anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the bookkeeping skills, I think, are great, but also just the basics of what is it to fill out a tax form? How do you do your taxes at 16 years old if your parents aren't doing them for you? Or maybe instead of us just, I've got my kid's W-2 over here. Maybe I shouldn't have just picked that up and given it to my CPA and said, oh, can you do the taxes? I'm going to go through with my kid for the tax return so that she knows what goes on it, what's in it, how it works, and where I might be able to use some of my depreciation potentially to offset some of her tax, or if I can bring her in on a property this year, that I can potentially use some of her investment of, maybe it's $100, maybe it's $500. I can allocate an estimated amount of depreciation on another property that I buy this year to her, so that next year she pays no tax. But she's a part owner of that property, but she can understand that, it's not just that I never pay tax, but this is why I didn't pay tax this year. And next year when I earn more money, this is why I need to invest another $500 or $1,000 on my dad next time, or that I can set her up to have her own investment somehow with some or none of her own money in the deal. So then she's maybe buying cash flow, and she's also buying depreciation, maybe a cost seg at some point, where she can actually benefit from that. And then the rest of her life is just, the more she earns, the more write-offs, the more opportunities she has to find ways that she can reduce the tax liability and hopefully never pay tax.
I mean, that was also a big aha when someone shared, because my wife is considered a real estate professional. I'm W-2. So I've been getting crushed on my W-2 since I've been, to be in the mortgage industry, you have to be you work at a mortgage company. So I'm in W-2 for a long time. So just getting absolutely crushed. So when someone shared with us the cost seg and the depreciation, and I mean, that's been a game changer. That changed my cash flow significantly in 2020, 2021, 2022.
Sounds like that was heavily related to the big gain that you've managed to realize in the last
Yes, that was a catalyst because then my tax, I went from 50% paying in taxes to nothing. So once I realized that's been a whole new game. So I've now been learning a lot about tax law and education.
Yeah, fantastic.
Game changer.
So what do you see the next couple of years? I mean, obviously we don't know where the market's going, but you're going to continue to strive and build.
I'm continuing to I'm building my real estate portfolio, continue to buy real estate, and just work hard right now, develop the great habits. But I continue what I like, just real estate. So I'm just that's what I know, and just buying real estate.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I'm so pleased that we connected the other week. I mean, not just through real estate, but obviously the Mental Journeys of Millions and Matthew Ferry. I think it's just great to have conversations with similar people and in very different places, and just talk about things that is often taboo in this world. We rarely talk about money. I mean, one of my friends was going through the Dave Ramsey program a few years ago, and we were talking about, well, when people go out to the bar every week or 2 or 3 times a week, and they're just going out because that's what they do every month or every week, why can't people have the confidence to say, hey, I just don't really have the money to be able to do that. So instead of spending money they don't have to do things that aren't really necessarily healthy or beneficial for them regularly, that they just say, hey, I'm a bit short this month. I'm now going on my journey to, reduce debt or eliminate debt, that type of thing. How much that would impact the other people around that then gives them the courage and the confidence to say, yeah, you know what? Same for me. Thank you. You know what I mean? And impact the way that the consumerism just takes us out, and it's pride that we need to be seen. We need to be around these people, and picking up a cocktail or a beer or whatever it is on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever the days are that people often go out. Even just the coffees in the morning. I was reading something on, I think it was either Bethany or Bethany's feed this morning from Brandon Turner. He said it's not the coffees that make the difference, but it's the way that we don't see that investing that amount of money in something in real estate or something other asset instead of the liability every morning. A lot of the young, and I would consider myself young as well in many ways, it's a generation that's leaned into Starbucks and all of those conveniences and those sweet treats and those types of things, whether it's actually Starbucks or coffee or something else, which becomes habitual. It just means that, I always drive past this place. The advertising is stuck in people's brains. The convenience, the habit, the behavior is just stuck. And imagine how much money just goes out the door. And like we were talking about, looking at how can we housekeep on the expenses? How can we cut back on the things that we really don't need that just became an exuberance or, you know, a luxury or an unnecessary thing that we either bought or, you know, kept paying for. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons we can learn is just live below our means.
Yep.
And put what we can into something beyond where we can see ourselves today, and just know that it's a very long-term, not an emotional investment like so many of these crypto people the last few years is they see something heading to the moon, buy, and then they're too late when it's on the way down and they've just lost out, you know?
But yeah, that was also crypto definitely brought my the emotions with investing out though, because I could see how I was feeling when that would happen, the fear of missing out, or like scared when things are going down to invest. I was paying attention to how I was feeling. But actually, I enjoyed. I mean, now I don't invest in crypto now, but I was enjoying doing it, just watching how I was feeling as I was investing and noticing the different emotions that were coming out. And it was. I mean, I guess it was evolving as a yeah, as an investor, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, well, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Scott. Well, look out for a couple of links of Scott, his Instagram, and do you have a YouTube channel, Scott?
Scott Evans Loans.
Perfect. We'll see a couple of links in the closing credits shortly, but thank you for sharing this time with us, Scott. It's been a great pleasure. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm sure the listeners will learn a lot too. So appreciate your time, and see you guys next time on the next episode of Birth to Net Worth.
Follow Scott's links below. An incredible lender. He'll be able to help you out in all of your lending needs. Please follow the links and check Scott out on Instagram, on the web. Incredible conversation. See you on the next edition of Birth to Net Worth.